How are you feeling? Are you in any pain?
I feel a little better now, thank you.
Rest now, I'll stay right here with you.
Your nuns are no longer allowed to have any contact with her.
Bishop, you can't do this. I have given 10 years of my life to this mission.
Picture this. The year is 1885. The state of Montana, a saloon in a frontier town so remote, so cold, so brutal, that most people who tried to survive there didn't. The room is full of cowboys, miners, gamblers, hard men who have fought bears, survived blizzards, and buried their friends in frozen ground. In walks a woman, 6 feet 2 inches tall, 200 pounds, a rifle on her back, a revolver tucked into her skirt, a cigar burning between her lips. She is black, she is a woman, and every man in that room moves out of her way. Now here is the part that should stop you cold. Montana had a law, a real written official law. Women were not allowed in saloons, but the mayor of Cascade, Montana, looked at this woman, born into slavery, expelled from a convent by a bishop, shot at by a man who complained. She earned more than him, and he passed a special exemption just for her. One woman in the entire state of Montana, the law bent for her. This is not just the story of a woman who delivered the mail. This is the story of what happens when a human being refuses, absolutely refuses, to become what the world tells them to be. Her name was Mary Fields. And I promise you, history had no business hiding her this long. Subscribe to Black Pioneers and Cowboys right now, because these are the names they buried, and we are digging every single one back up. Tell us in the comments, had you ever heard the name Mary Fields before today? Now, let us begin. The year is 1832. Somewhere in Hickman County, Tennessee, a baby girl is born. We do not know the exact date because she is born into slavery. And in 1832, America, the birth of an enslaved child is not recorded in a register of names and dates and tender memories. It is recorded in a ledger, like livestock, like property, like a number. Her name, the name they give her, is Mary, Mary Fields. And from the first breath she takes in that Tennessee air, the world has already decided what she is allowed to be. Quiet, obedient, invisible. Can you imagine being born and having the world look at you, not as a child, but as someone else's asset? The South in 1832 is a machine built on black bodies and white silence. Cotton fields stretching further than the eye can see. The crack of whips, the sound of families being torn apart at the auction block. Mary Fields grows up in the middle of all of it. We know almost nothing about her childhood because nobody thought to write it down. That is the first theft. Before anyone took anything else from Mary Fields, history took her story. The Civil War ends in 1865. Mary Fields is around 33 years old. She is free, but free in 1865 America means you own nothing. You have nowhere to go. You have no papers, no land, no money. The country that just freed you has no plan for what happens next. So Mary does what survivors do. She moves. She works on riverboats along the Mississippi. A chambermaid, a laundress, hard, grueling work, but it is her work. For her wages, for the first time in her life. Eventually, she finds her way to Toledo, Ohio, to the Ursuline Convent of the Sacred Heart. And here is where this story gets strange. because the nun who ran that convent, Mother Mary Amadeus Dunn, was connected to the same family that had once enslaved Mary Fields in Tennessee. Not a stranger, someone from the same world that had owned her. And yet these two women, one a former slave, one a Catholic nun from an influential white family, became the closest of friends. Can you imagine that friendship? The complexity of it, the trust it required, the sheer human courage it took for Mary Fields to look at this woman from the world that had broken her and choose to love her anyway. Mary worked at that convent for years, washed laundry, managed the kitchen, grew and maintained every inch of those grounds. And one thing became very clear very fast. Mary Fields was not built for small spaces, not built for rules that did not make sense to her, not built for being told what a woman, especially a black woman, was and was not allowed to do. One of the nuns wrote about her temper. She said, "God help anyone who walked on the lawn after Mary had cut it 6 feet 200 pounds. A woman who had survived slavery, survived the death of everything she was supposed to be, survived a world designed to destroy her, and she was still cutting that lawn perfectly because it was her lawn and nobody was gonna disrespect it." In 1884, Mother Amadeus is called to Montana, a mission near Cascade, a school for Native American girls. Brutal territory, brutal winters, barely any resources, and almost no help. Then the message comes. Mother Amadeus is gravely ill, possibly dying. Mary Fields does not hesitate. She leaves Toledo. She travels across the country to the most remote, unforgiving corner of Montana, not because she was ordered to, not because she had to, because her friend needed her. And that right there is the kind of person Mary Fields was. She arrives in Montana. She nurses Mother Amadeus back to health. Then she stays. For 10 years, Mary Fields runs that mission. She hauls supplies by wagon through blizzards that would kill most men. One night, a blizzard hit so hard, it obscures the entire road. She cannot see, she cannot move forward. The temperature is dropping fast. So Mary Fields does the only thing that makes sense to a woman who has already survived everything. She walks back and forth through the snow all night long, not to get anywhere, just to stay warm enough to survive until morning. Another night, wolves surround her wagon, a pack of them, circling in the darkness, eyeing the cargo. Mary Fields stands guard, alone, in the Montana wilderness, all night. She does not lose a single piece of mail. Can you imagine a woman in her 50s, born into slavery, standing alone in the dark against a pack of wolves? Not because someone told her to, because that was the job. And Mary Fields did not do things halfway. But here is where the story breaks your heart. 10 years of blizzards and wolves and bone-cracking cold. 10 years of hauling supplies. That 10 years of making that mission survive. And then one man, one disgruntled, small, deeply threatened white man who was furious that a black woman earned more money than he did, complained to the bishop. That is all it took. One complaint from one man who could not bear the thought that Mary Fields was worth more than him. The Bishop of Helena, Montana, Bishop Brondell, banned Mary Fields from the mission, told the nuns they were no longer allowed to have any contact with her. The nuns who loved her, who had relied on her, who had watched her fight wolves and survive blizzards for a decade, were heartbroken. But the bishop was the bishop, and his word was law. Mary Fields had given 10 years of her life to that mission, and she was thrown out because a man could not handle being paid less than her. But here is where the story gets truly extraordinary. Here is the part that history forgot to tell you. Mary Fields lands in Cascade, Montana, alone. No job, no income, around 60 years old, in a frontier town where she is the only black resident. She opens a restaurant. It fails. Not because the food is bad, not because people don't come. It fails because Mary Fields cannot bring herself to turn away anyone who is hungry. Cowboys with no money, she feeds them anyway. Miners down on their luck, come in, sit down, eat. She would rather go broke than watch someone go hungry. The restaurant closes, she opens another one. It fails for the same reason. And here is the part nobody talks about. The town of Cascade watches all of this happen. These rough, hard frontier people watch this former slave, this woman expelled by a bishop, this woman who survived what none of them could survive, and something shifts because in 1895, when Mary Fields is around 63 years old, the United States Post Office opens a contract for a mail route, 34 miles, round trip, through the Montana wilderness, in all weather, against all obstacles. In the town of Cascade, these cowboys, these miners, these people who had no reason to go out of their way for anyone, they rally behind Mary Fields. They help her secure the contract. She becomes the first black woman in the history of the United States to carry mail on a star route. 63 years old, and she never, not once, missed a single delivery. When the snow was too deep for her horses, she strapped on snowshoes and carried the mail on her back. On foot, through Montana winters, in her 60s, never missed a day. And then the mayor of Cascade looks at this woman who was born with nothing, who was expelled by a bishop, who was told her whole life what she was not allowed to be. And he passes a special law just for her. Women were not allowed in saloons. Mary Fields was. The town closes its schools on her birthday every single year to celebrate her. Think about that. Not a parade, not a plaque, not a special ceremony. They close the schools like a national holiday for a woman born in a ledger with no name and no date. Mary Fields retires from mail delivery in 1903. She is around 71 years old. She opens a laundry. She babysits the town's children, the same children whose parents once hesitated to leave their kids with a gun-carrying, cigar-smoking, saloon-going woman, now cannot imagine anyone else looking after them. Because those children knew something, that the bishop and the man with his complaint and every system that tried to contain Mary Fields never understood. Under all that fire, all that fierceness, all that refusing to be small was the biggest heart in Cascade, Montana. In 1912, a fire destroys part of her home. The town rebuilds it together without being asked, because that is what you do for someone who walked through blizzards for you, for someone who stood guard against wolves for you, for someone who fed you when you had nothing. Mary Fields dies on December 5th, 1914. She is found lying in the snow near the edge of town. She is buried in Cascade. And in 1959, 45 years after her death, the actor Gary Cooper, a Montana native who knew her as a child, wrote these words about her in Ebony magazine. Born a slave somewhere in Tennessee, Mary lived to become one of the freest souls ever to draw a breath, or of 38. One of the freest souls ever to draw a breath. A woman born without a birthday, without a record, without a country willing to see her. The freest soul in the room, the philosophical punch. Here is what the story of Mary Fields really tells us. Freedom is not something that is given to you. Mary Fields was technically freed in 1865, but the world kept building new cages, the bishop's ban, the man's complaint, the laws that said women could not enter saloons, the restaurants that failed because she refused to be the kind of person who let someone go hungry. Every single cage, she walked through it, not by asking permission, not by making herself smaller, not by becoming what the world told her to be, but by being so completely, so unapologetically, so powerfully herself, that the world eventually had no choice but to bend. History does not remember Mary Fields the way it should. You will find her name in footnotes, in a handful of museum plaques, in one ebony article from 1959. But in Cascade, Montana, they closed the schools on her birthday. Not Congress, not the president, not the history books. A small frontier town that had watched this woman survive everything gave her the only holiday that matters, the one that people actually feel. Subscribe to Black Pioneers and Cowboys, because next we tell the story of 40,000 freed slaves who decided that if America would not give them freedom, they would build it themselves from nothing. In the middle of Kansas, in the dead of winter, they called themselves the Exodusters. In the story of what happened to the town they built, Nicodemus, Kansas, will make you angrier than anything we have told you yet. We will see you there.